Hey there, what's up? This is Ill Factor from beatacademy.com, and in this video, I'm going to share with you some music production tips while recreating the beat that we hear in Suburban's Cradles. Now, I've been getting a lot of requests for this from my last video in which I gave you my feedback and commentary about the song. So let's dive in and start recreating. So we're going to start off with the riff that we hear at the very beginning. I'm going to start by loading a stock piano. You could follow along using any stock piano that you might have in your DAW. Let's take a look at the riff. Now, when we listen to it and focus in on the texture of the sound, it definitely sounds distorted. And as I mentioned before in my previous video, it sounds like there's some amp simulation going on. So we're going to go to our amp plugin here in Ableton Live, and you could use an amp simulator that you might have. And let's go ahead and dial in and see what we get from here. So let's comb through some of the selections. Now, it sounds about right, but yet it's a little too harsh. So using a cabinet plugin with an amp simulation plugin really helps just take the harshness away from the distortion that it's adding. So let's go ahead and put a cabinet plugin. I'm going to go to the cabinet plugin in Ableton Live and bring that down. Now it sounds pretty cool. Let's go switch from the mono output over to dual and do the same thing here out in the cabinet. We can go ahead and switch over from a condenser mic to a dynamic mic, and let's see what we get when we switch the two. Definitely like the condenser and the way it feels. So we're going to stay with that and use a little bit of EQing to take off some of the low end and some of the high end. It does have a radio effect. What I mean by radio effect, you might hear this a lot, is that the radio speakers are, usually played on cheap speakers, so you're not getting a lot of low end, nor you're getting a lot of high end. So that radio effect comes by just taking away the low end and the higher end frequency of that sound. So now let's go ahead and focus on the drum pattern that we hear in the breakdown. So I've got a drum rack loaded with some samples from my Beat Academy sample pack here. And this is a sample pack that I've put together with construction kits, loops, one-shots, and it's yours absolutely free. You can click the link below in the description box to download this. So let's take a look at the pattern. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to copy that clap. So I'm going to copy the whole row by just clicking the actual sample here. And with that whole row highlighted, holding the Option button on my keyboard, I'm going to drag that up to this clap here. And while the whole row is still highlighted, we're going to hold our Command button so that the grid is no longer active. And we can just click this and nudge this a little back. And this is going to move the whole row. And we're doing that just to get a little bit of that flam effect. Now let's take a listen without it. And let's put the flam back in. So now let's go ahead and focus on the 808 that we hear in the chorus as well. So I'm going to click and drag this 808 instrument that I've created, which you can also download, including the 808 sample itself, in the sample pack. So that's in the link below in the description box. So let's go ahead and create our MIDI region. Just going to hold Shift Command M to do that. And then what we're going to do is just copy the actual pattern of the kick. So the bass is going to mirror the same pattern as the kick. So let's just go ahead, click this whole row. Command C to copy, go back in here and hit paste. Now we're just going to move the pattern, the notes, to where they belong. So the first note is going to be the B flat or A sharp. So let's go up a couple octaves, hold Shift. And so that's our first note there with the A. And then I'm going to use my MIDI controller. So I've got the first note, that A sharp, and then down to the F. And I can just get that second note. And what I like about it is that it's showing me where the note is here. So I can just click that note and locate it in my piano roll. Next roll would be the F sharp, and then down to the C sharp. So those are the notes that we're going to be using for the bass. Now we're just going to shape the tonality of that 808. So let's go into here. And what we need to do is actually head over to the classic mode so that we can have control over the sustain and the release, because the bass notes that we hear are very short. And depending on how you adjust the sustain and the release of this bass really determines on the overall tone. So I'm going to detune this just a little bit, and we're going to choose a different setting here. We're going to try the rock setting for this bass. And open this up a little bit more so I can hear some of the harmonic distortion. So there's a little too much sustain there, so I'm going to bring that down. And there we go. So let's double that. And doing a little bit of tweaking to the actual amp simulator that we've got to add the harmonic distortion. Let's just see if we can find the tone that we're looking for. And then what I'm going to do is head over to the last compressor in this instrument, which is just a sidechain compressor. Choose the drum rack and choose that kick drum, the pre-effects, and let that just kind of get in the, allow the bass to just duck out of the way of the kick. All right, now we're gonna get to that awesome, cool little music box part that we hear also in the drop. So for this, I'm actually gonna be using a third-party plugin, and this is Contact by Native Instruments. And we're gonna go to the actual factory library, and we're gonna go under World Instruments and Mellophones. And right here, we're gonna choose Music Box, and we're gonna use that. And so we hear the music box throughout the whole song in different places and filtered out and things like that. So let's go ahead and drag the piano riff that we have in the beginning, copy that right onto here. Let's just take a listen. So it's pretty cool. And then we'll just eliminate some of that reverb on here. But to get that nice little triplet and that flam feel that we hear, there's a little bit, there's some articulation happening. And so the articulation section here is what we're going to be manipulating to get the feel that we're looking for. So let's double click in the actual region here. And we're going to go and to C0. And the reason why I'm going to C0, I'm placing a note there, is because inside Contact, we can trigger the articulation. We determine what note will trigger this specific articulation. So we have C0 is going to trigger lower grace. And if I change this, then C0 is going to trigger grace, lower grace 2, and so on and so on. So here's the effect it gives when we have the articulation on. So we need to first set the damp so that we're not getting any overlapping, and set it to solo. And so you can determine and so if we lower, take the solo off, we get the, too many notes playing at the same time. So let's go ahead and move this up to lower flip and see what that gets. So C0 is going to allow us to trigger lower flip, and we can assign D0 to D flat 0 to be another note, and so on. So within here, we can now determine why I just want C0 to play, let's say, just for this much, and then when we get over here, do a different type of articulation. So let's see what how that works. So you can see how it changes the articulation here. So with some time and just kind of navigating through and, you know, being a little nitpicky with which articulation is going to work best, we can go ahead and just kind of set this to where we like it. So let's go back to the factory library and let's layer this with another instrument. And we're going to go into the MIDI receiving channel here, MIDI channel, and put it on an Omni so that both of these are being triggered. Now we'll solo this so we can just focus in on the second instrument. And we're going to set this to solo, the damp style, and we're also going to trigger the articulation. So we'll keep it in the same. So what's cool is you can have the different articulations for different sounds, and it just becomes a cool little layering with each other until you kind of get the right vibe. That's what gives that nice little triplet, that triplet vibe. So I'll have the stanza here, and we'll just leave it there for right now. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna use the compressor to sidechain. So when the kick hits, the compressor does an exaggerated sidechain and we don't really kind of hear the initial first note. It'll duck out of the way. So let's choose drum rack, the kick drum here, and let's just set it way down and see what that gives us. I'm also going to use a multi-dynamic plugin. We'll go to the over the top preset and just scale that back. And now let's go ahead and see what it sounds like with everything else. So I would have to go in there and map out some of the articulation to change from time to time, but that's kind of that's close to the effect there. And then when it widens up halfway through, when it gets really wide, I've got a doubler here by Waves. I've got the Waves doubler set to a return track in Ableton Live, and that's my return track F here. So I can just automate when this would just kind of go up. So let's right click here, show automation, and let's just have, for the second half, the send just go full blast on stun to the doubler. The tips I've shared with you in this video are helpful, and as my gift to you for watching this video, I actually like to send you a guide that I've put together. It's a 5-step guide to creating a professional beat, and this is a great thing to reference while you're producing your music to help you kind of move along and get over some of the hurdles that are hindering you from finishing your projects. This guide is yours free, so you can simply click the link below to download this. There's going to be a separate link for this guide, as well as the sample pack that I've mentioned earlier. These are both my gifts to you for watching. And so you can either download it through the link, or you can visit beatacademy.com/5steps to download your 5-step guide today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.